Now, we are in an elective season, or call it the political season, where a lot of election material is going around. Now, this week, me and my colleague Flavia Tomasime Kabura, we're trying to see how prepared are the young generation or the youth for leadership. It's a conversation we're having. Let's now connect to Flavia Tomasime as she takes us in this conversation about young in leadership.
And we're saying that it's in anticipation about 2065. They're saying the population, the young population, will be about 40 million. And today, over 70% of our population is under the age of 30. And as we gear into this election period, we're saying, what will it take to earn the youth vote? And I have a young Ugandan here to talk all of this, to break it down for us and to be honest about it. As you know, youths are. Maria Alessi, good morning and welcome to Morning at NTV.
Thank you very much, Flavia. Good morning and good morning, viewers.
You are not a stranger to NTV, so welcome again.
Thank you.
Interesting that Research World International said we've talked to ages 18 to 34, over 2,000 people, and these are some of their thoughts. These are their opinions. And what I wanted to pick out of that was that 49% of those felt they were free to talk about politics, which is just as we're doing today. And I was telling myself, is it that they are free to talk about, is there a right way to talk about politics anyway? Is there a right and wrong way? Because I feel like young people have a laissez-faire, a fun attitude towards every conversation they have. Even politics is not an exception to this. Does that mean they understand what they are saying when they say they are free to talk about politics?
Of course, freedom is relative. So it's the way one person feels free is not the way another person might feel free. But if 49% of the people who were spoken to say they feel free to talk about politics, then I think we should also still feel alarmed, because that number should be at 70, it should be at 90, it should be at 95%. But in terms of the way people talk about politics and whether they understand it, politics, in simple definition, is the way systems are governed, is the way people are governed. So I can talk about the way I'm governed in the easiest way, in the simplest way that works for me. And so it's important, if those 49% people feel free to talk about politics and they talk about it in the most laissez-faire way, then let them talk about it, because then they're talking about the way it affects them. But of course, we've gotten accustomed to political discourse sounding a certain way. Like now I've just used the word discourse instead of conversation, right? We expect it to sound heavy words, politics, fiscal policy, monetary policy.
And we assume it's the right way.
And we assume it's the right way of talking about it. And we've normalized it to actually seem like the right way. But if people are talking about how they engage with their leaders, how they feel like their leaders are governing them, how their leaders are delivering for them, if they're talking about, for example, even the personal lives of their leaders, because when you take political office, you stop being a private person, you have become a public figure. So we're concerned about everything. Exactly. So we're concerned about everything, and we put you on a pedestal because you've presented yourself as the one who can carry the mantle to make us better. So how they talk about it is an entire debate, but we should actually be worried about the fact that the figure is 49% and not 90 and not 80%, because then that tells us that 51% of the people who were spoken to concerning this matter do not feel free, and then we need to
about politics,
and that question is, why don't they feel free?
Do you believe it? Because I feel like youths have, because someone is saying leadership, you serve people, you're answerable and accountable to the voters, and I feel like maybe it's the other way around. Youths feel like, oh, that's our boss. As a leader, we answer to you instead. Do you feel like there's that in the youths feel like, no, it's the other way around? That's our boss. You know, sir, you're an MP, you're the boss, instead of the other way around.
Yes, that so there is truth to that, really, because it's also like a cultural
respect.
Yes, it's a cultural placement, right? So you have elders and your younger people, and also we've been raised in that space where if you talked back at your mother, it was never going to end well. If you talked back at your father, it was never going to end well, right? In school and everywhere. So yes, there is that relationship between between our leaders and young people. But then there's also the pushback that is happening right now. And for me, I think that's even what gives me more hope, and that encourages young people more, because young people are speaking out, and and people are showing, for example, people are showing up in villages where they've been leaders and they're contesting, and people are throwing them out of villages, and young people are saying, you've not served us, go back. And if you look at, of course, social media is not a great marker, but every time there's a story about, like a political story, go into the comment section. That's where the courage lies. Like, people are actually, like, young people say the bravest things. Half of the time I'm like, yo, are you going to go
they're
home?
quite blunt.
Yes,
they
they're
give
very
their
blunt.
opinion.
Yes. So there's also that pushback. I think they've realized, I think over the time we've realized that we give these people our power to serve us, so they can't treat us like we are supposed to report to them. They have the duty to report to us.
We shouldn't be afraid to ask for accountability.
Exactly.
I feel like that's where the issue is.
Yes.
We look at figures that come out, or corruption stories, and say, oh, these people.
Yes.
Versus why.
Yes, and then
Why
those
is this
people
happening?
tell us that your leaders are a product of your
We
of your
deserve the
people.
leaders.
Yeah, that we
dear.
get.
But you spoke about social media, and in the research they said that 89% were aware of the electoral process. And you and I were having this conversation saying they're aware of the process, but we have invalid votes. That number keeps increasing every other time we vote. Invalid is saying that I have voted, but there's something wrong with how I have voted.
Exactly.
So as you said, you get excited, you go, and the tick becomes a tick. And the minute it crosses a certain box, invalid. So what are we aware of, you think?
I think that's a very important question to ask, because you see, civic education is the responsibility of the Human Rights Commission in Uganda. Voter education or election education is the mandate of the Electoral Commission. So the Electoral Commission really never has time. So they have all these things going on, and
I feel like they give us so much information at a certain time, then go quiet, and then come back at a certain time.
Because remember, within the 5 years, there are lots of by-elections. We have a culture of by-elections happening within the 5 years, and then so they never. I don't know whether it's poor planning on their side or lack of resources or something, but the voter education never happens in a timely manner. Even within, for example, civil society organizing, because they also they support government in the processes of voter education. This voter education starts now. So they are also in the process of... And I feel like there's
a pressure for young people now. If you give me all the information right now.
But also they are busy because campaigns have started, whether you want to believe it or not. So people are moving around. People are more interested in hearing what the person they could potentially vote is going to say. There are those who are also running for office, because now we have, we're going to have extra political positions to run for. So you have more people running for office. At some point I thought to myself, maybe the president should just declare each of us a member of parliament.
At
and
this point.
at this point, right? Because it's quite concerning.
Yes. But speaking of that, because if you are a young person, given that our attention span isn't really the best as young people.
That's just
and I get there, no really, and I'm flipping through, and at some point I'm bound to not vote out of knowing the person. I'm like, you know what, let's just
go through this.
Let's just go.
There are many candidates, there are many elections.
Also, the affiliation. Do you feel the young people are gearing more towards a person or a party?
So I think that's really a tricky one to answer for me, because we cannot underpin the loyalty of individuals, right? That even today you see people who have spoken a lot about saying that, for example, the NRM has been taking us through this process and it's not working, and then their friend runs on the NRM ticket, and then they're campaigning for their friend, and then all of a sudden it's okay, right? And so I think it's a two-way card for young people, right? And young people are not a homogeneous group. So the way young people in urban areas experience political policy, political work is very different from the young people in rural areas and peri-urban areas experience politics. So urban areas, generally, I'm going to usually vote the opposition. When the opposition becomes government, they're most likely to vote the next opposition, because again, people have high expectations.
As what is that, a defiance nature? But okay, it's
You
high
know,
expectation.
yes,
We'll
it's
call
high.
it high
It is
expectation.
defiance because
Yes.
you've come and told us you're going to fix education, you're going to fix healthcare, you're going to fix the economic environment, and then 5 years down the road,
Nothing.
we're seeing the same thing.
Yes.
So we're going to try to find someone else who fixes that for us. So you can also see the pattern of people who run for office within urban areas. For example, Kampala and Greater Kampala, is that if today it's not very likely that someone is going to outrightly run on the NRM ticket for Kampala Central MP. They might run as an independent but leaning to the NRM, so they want to rule that out. And so with that, it depends on the issues also of young people. And also, we know that there are rural areas in this country that are predominantly NRM supporting. So the way they vote is going to be informed.
Influenced by
Yes,
party
Karamoja,
versus,
for example. And of course, even the individuals there are going to run on that party ticket because
it's
you're
an
trying to win.
advantage. Yes,
the
yes,
point
yes.
of running for electoral office is
to
to win
win.
above all else.
Absolutely.
Yes, so it's issues, it's one, issues. People are going to listen issues. So ahead of this election, we're going to hear conversations around employment. That's going to be big because COVID has also changed that
everything.
dynamic. And then also you're seeing how government is responding to economics. Right now is that a lot of the things are targeting the bigger institutions, the people who are able to get a loan from the Uganda Development Bank of a certain amount, which is not the case of the person who's been earning 1,000 a day, and the work has changed completely. So there'll be also conversations around healthcare, conversations around education are going to be very, very, very important because you have a batch of people who have not been able to continue with school, especially in higher institutions of higher learning. And then the arts. We've seen what has happened in the past few weeks, and you know, young people are very enthusiastic about the arts. So the conversations around there are going to, so a lot of conversations are going to happen around there. But mostly, most important for people usually is really economics, because that's the thing I feel on a daily. Whether someone is sick, I need money in my pocket to treat them. So young people will vote issues, will vote people, but will also vote movements that are speaking to the things that are important to them. So that dynamic keeps changing. You can't do a black and white on it.
I mean, there's an assumption that all of us young voters are on Twitter. Or online. Okay, I'll say online. And they'll say those people who are making noise. But I saw from the last election, being on this end of the work, you see the people online aren't necessarily going to the lines. Or they get to the lines and you see them tweeting, the line was too long and I went home.
And I went back home.
Okay, so but yet there's an assumption that all young people are online. But we saw from this research that said that you'd be surprised that the information was not actually gotten online. There was less and less people saying, I got the information from online. Instead, they were saying from our local leaders, word of mouth, radio. Now that we're going into where we are, into the scientific campaigns, and everything is going to be either on TV, radio, or online. Is there an assumption, because we might say, oh, now you're only gearing towards the young voters. But that might not necessarily be the truth.
Yes, that might not necessarily be the truth, because, so again, we're just recovering from an economic situation, right? The cost of internet is still high. You then, on top of that, social media requires you to actually pay a tax to use it, or for those who have decided that this is not the hill upon which I will die, they've got VPN, right?
Yes.
And so, by far, to this day, radio is still the most listened to source of information in the mass media space. Now, I'm not underpinning the importance of social media, that it has its place, because we've seen a lot of change that has come over the years because of social media. And also, there's also the fact that some people are going to try to get onto social media because they want to keep up with the political tide, to know what is happening. So it's sort of like a scale that keeps changing. But of course, currently Uganda has, as of December 31st last year, we have about 18 million people who are internet users. Of course, if you have two phones, we're counting your phone separately. We're also counting your SIM cards and things like that. But if you think about it in the sense of leaders, a lot of people know about politics from conversations.
Yes.
That even within my circles, and they're very classed circles, right, is that someone will see something on the internet and call me up and be like, Maria, you're the one who's doing very political work. What's actually happening? So those conversations are very, very important. But social media is going to be very important because we have 1.5 new voters, brand new voters in the country, and majority of them are young people. And young people are more increasingly getting online, whether it's for 1 day or for 5 days. So it plays a crucial role, but we cannot underpin the importance of radio. We cannot underpin the importance of one-on-one conversations because we're going into a scientific election and you're supposed to get space on radio. Radios are going to sell their airtime. There are places where the radio station is owned by the person who's running as member of parliament. How are young people supposed to access? Because how much is 30 seconds on NTV? How much is 30 seconds on Capital FM?
It's a highest bidder.
Yes, so he the one who offers the most money is the one who gets it. Do young people have money? Is the other question we should be asking ourselves.
That influence, and speaking of influence, a few years ago, and I'm quite sure the the opinion hasn't changed much, where Teresa said that the biggest part of the population they asked said they would engage in corruption easily because they felt it would be an answer to many of their problems. And they've seen that culture, it's a cycle. So-and-so did it, my parents did it, this one did it, and I think we had Bishop Niringi here the other day who said that, let's take it this way. A child fails in school and the parent says, no, here's something, make sure my child is promoted in front of the child.
Yes.
You think it's nothing, but then you're creating youth that think this is the way things are done. This is how things are done. What will that work for youths in this space, especially now that we've said it's the highest bidder? You have more money now, you get more space, you're in people's faces, you're most likely to win.
Yes, capitalism.
You know, you're not really helping things.
Yes, so I think for one, I think it's a bit dishonest to, yes, young people will say they will engage easily because they've seen it.
Yes.
Like it's what gives you access. It's if I want to get my driving permit quickly, there's a guard there who says they're going to push things for me.
In fact, you're hoping there's someone
like
pushing.
Yeah, so, and also it speaks to the cost of elections because the cost of elections has increased with every other year, and this is not going to be different. And also because this time round, I don't think we ever got out of the electoral process. Like after the 2016 election ended, it just continued. So things continued, people still went around, communities giving money. There was a time when we saw the president do trips around the city.
What of the leader who says, vote for me so I can eat just like the other one?
But you see, that's the thing, that we've come to a place where people are tired and they are angry and they're like, you know what? Afazali let someone else eat also, right? And so we can't take that away. And that's why it's becoming a tall order that even the most eloquent, the most brilliant, the young people who will articulate political issues and policy issues very well still have got to play that card. So they still have got to give the branded cap, the branded T-shirt, because this has become a system.
But what kind of leaders will we then have? Because the youth today are definitely getting into the system. They'll be our leaders tomorrow. We've fixed nothing clearly if this is the cycle the youth are seeing now. If their vote is going to be bought.
The good thing about like seeing a cycle like this is that there are also people who want to move away from that, who are saying that, you know, we can create a counter system, a parallel system. And we're seeing, okay, for this election, you're going to see more young people running. And there are young people there who have integrity. There are young people who because the idea, and this is a very generic discussion. They say young people don't know what they want. Young people want to get rich quickly. But there are so many honest young people out there. Of course, statistics will never support us. That if you're saying 70% of Ughanda's population is young, but about 22-23% is like between 18 and 30. Of course, statistics won't support us. If you're going to look for the most corrupt people, they're going to be in there. Okay, no, most corrupt I doubt because they're older. Yes, the older ones. But the statistics will never work in the favor of young people. But it's also a narrative that other people push to keep young people out of spaces. So if we consistently push the story that young people are are corrupt, they're trying to get rich quickly, they don't want to work,
Yes.
then it's much
They're
easier
lazy. I
they're
think
lazy.
one of the reasons they give for the unemployment, they're not trying to get jobs. They're not trying to create jobs. They're lazy.
But young people,
Are far from lazy.
that narrative hurts me so deeply because young people work so hard in this country.
They're
that,
innovative,
yes,
they think
they're
outside the
innovative.
box.
They walk to work. Like when you wake up in the morning and see the people who walk to work, it's young people, and they're walking to work to earn 2,000 shillings, 3,000 shillings a day. They and the people who tell us we're lazy, they got out of school at a point where they just got out and were placed in jobs, or they got out and they went for scholarships. Today, for me to be able to live and work in Kampala, I might end up living in Bulindo. And by the time you cross from, you're literally working for transport to just get you to work, but somehow someone expects you to save and do all of these things without also addressing.
Then we come back to young people and not saving.
Yes,
That's why
and then when they
hit
say
them.
yes, and then when they are talking about the fact that they've created work for young people, they're talking about this work that is 1,000, 2,000 shillings, and yet I can't even afford healthcare. Or the fact that for some young people, they are pulling an entire family.
The dependency.
Yes,
yeah.
the dependency is really high. So the parents, so this is how parents do it. They send one child to the university in the hope that that one child
will pay for the next one.
Exactly.
Oh.
So it.
By the way, and take care of the parents while at it.
Exactly.
I know
So it's
the
a very,
cycle.
we call it black tax. It's a very difficult thing.
Research in the youth report said that Uganda's youthful population must be tapped into the journey of middle income. Let's not even go there. But they said to achieve this, they must have clearly targeted and tailor-made interventions.
Yes.
What would those be?
So targeted and tailor-made innovations also includes things like, for example, you cannot implement a project universally across Uganda, right? The challenges of young people in Karamoja are very different from the challenges of young people in Kabale. Yes, unemployment is a thing, but the face of unemployment in Kabale is very different from the face of unemployment in Karamoja, in Kampala, in Maracha, like all of these places. I think the other thing is also to have an honest conversation about the business environment in which young people are expected to start businesses and thrive somehow. Their businesses are supposed to grow. We don't even have conversations in this country on tax. You learn about tax when most likely when URA has slapped you with an assessment. So you went through the process of registering your business, getting a TIN because you want to compete favorably. And then you didn't know how to file returns, and then they slap you with 3 million shillings, which is your entire capital.
So you don't know how to then survive, given that you're working for tax.
Exactly. So it's also having those conversations. Are we having honest conversations on tax? But also, are we protecting some parts of the economy for people to thrive? I think one of our failures as a country, and we need to find a way to undo it, is to leave the economy to laissez-faire. Everybody now knows it doesn't work, that you have got to protect certain spaces for indigenous businesses to actually be able to grow, but also what kind of financing are you providing to these businesses? How are you fitting them into the bigger procurement system? How are you fitting them into bigger transactions for them to actually be able to thrive? But also, today we count our economies in relation to numbers. So we say the GDP has increased, but when you look at income inequality, are we having that conversation? Are we having a conversation on yes, the economy is growing, but is it creating jobs? That even these big companies, high capital companies, are they creating employment? Because we're going to continue to see this crisis, because the purpose of business, Flavia, right from the start is for profit. It's not for employment. If I can make all the profit I need to make without employing you,
then
I will not.
There's no point.
If my business can grow without employing a third or fourth person,
then that's how
there's no point.
Yes.
There's no reason for me to employ someone else. And so we have to go to think about those things. And that's why it's important for the state to engage in business actively, so that we're able to protect and guard growing businesses. Because the duty, we can, so a gentleman called TMS Rouge on Twitter talked about how a lot of African governments clap by the amount of foreign direct investment that has come in. But we should start marking the growth of our economies and our businesses by how many businesses leave the continent to be able to set up on the other side of the world, because that's where the trick is. But of course, our governments have the challenge of global power dynamics, because it's not just like Museveni, or even if Robert Chagulanyi became president, or Kalemba, the woman standing, like even if any of them became president, there's also global politics they must navigate in order to solve these problems, that they're not just going to go away by change
Actually,
of regime.
some should stop promising certain things.
Yes, I think they should, because they're not having
really,
an honest conversation.
yes.
But of course, this is information that is accessed by a certain class of people in society, that the border man has no understanding of global politics. He is not very interested in global politics because he's asking himself, how does Donald Trump affect my sleep at night?
You know how it is, Andisa.
Exactly. So for him, he knows Robert Chagulanyi, he knows Roy Kaguta Museveni.
Yes.
That is it.
Oh.
Yes.
So as we wind up, I'm intrigued to ask, again, what will it take to have the youth vote? Is it disseminating the information so that they can actually understand it? Is it having young people that they can relate to, if that's even something that happens? I mean, what do we need? Is it a couple of things versus just one thing?
It's a couple of things, because to say that it's the issues you're going to bring to the table is deeply dishonest, because it's issues. It's also, yes, young people might also vote their fellow young people, but it's for to be able to, one, ensure that they fully understand electoral processes, they fully know how to actually use the ballot paper when they show up at the polling station, but also to be able to address the different needs. That how then do we ensure that young people with disabilities do show up at rallies, they are represented? How do we ensure young women are actually also present in these spaces? How do we ensure that young people living in poverty are engaged actively? But for me, my message to the young people, most importantly, is that the problems that they're providing solutions to now, they are very valid problems. That sleeping hungry tonight is a more important problem today than a tax policy that's going to affect you in 5 years. But even as you think about your needs now, think about what that need is going to be in 5 years, because what we're looking to achieve is a system where I don't have to live for today only. Is that I'm looking for leaders who are going to create a system that can even work outside of them, that I don't need Honorable Flavia to come and that is the day that I get 5,000 shillings to be able to take me through the week or 2 weeks, but rather, does Honorable Flavia understand what it is to create an environment for me to actually do a business that will give me money, so that she also doesn't have to always have to give me 5.
I think that will also create that we can't just keep the one leader trying to fix everything.
Yes,
another one can come into the same system.
Yes, but I also encourage young people to think about like honest change.
Yeah.
That if it hasn't been if it hasn't been working for you, whether it's your member of parliament, whether it's your LC5 chairperson, the beauty about like election processes, right, is that it doesn't guarantee that you're going to have good leaders, but it guarantees that you can actually change them.
Yes.
That is what it guarantees. Yes.
I think you're right. I think before we want to change or do anything, let's understand how the process is. You know, don't look at the Electoral Commission as something there that you'll only meet on the ballot on ballot day. Maybe the information, as I said, a good percent, 89% were aware. Maybe also check what you are aware of.
Yes, what are you actually aware of? But also to ask Electoral Commission leaders to tell us, because how am I supposed to know what I'm aware of when I don't know what is expected on the other end?
I think young people need to stop being afraid of asking for accountability at all levels.
Yes, at all levels. At all levels.
Yeah, you can argue maybe we might be too blunt online, but we still need to ask for the accountability.
Yes, and that's part of accountability, telling the truth to power. Like, that is accountability.
However much, even when it hurts.
Yes, even when it's painful and scary.
And scary. Maria Leslie, thank you so much for your time and honesty. You see, this is how young people break down information. That's it for Morning at 10 TV. Thank you so much for watching.